welcome backgrounds.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everybody. I guess that's where I would like to begin, is really to say an enormous thank you to the Universidad Juárez del Estado de Durango, to Kay and all of her team, her wonderful team, that I've had the pleasure of working with, not just for this conference, but for many, many years. So thank you all very much indeed for coming again. And I guess there are 2 or 3 other things I want to say. Thank you for introducing me. But just remember that in the end, all of that stuff I have, all of that stuff I do, but that's not what I am. What I am is more than that, I hope. And I hope that sometimes when we're at these events, we remember to share something of what we are, not just what we've done, not just what we've researched, not just the certificates that we have, but what we are. Why? Because everybody that we come into contact with is going to perceive that. And that includes our students. So, what have I prepared for you today? It's a very simple reminder, because I thought we've seen so much wonderful research from the licenciatura, from the maestrías, from the doctorados. Perhaps today it would be nice to almost wind up the event with something that isn't about my own research. If you're interested in that, later we can have a coffee and talk about that. But it's more of a reminder, because what we have been doing, I hope, over this period of 3 days together is reflecting. In every talk we go to, we're thinking about how we can relate it to our own work. Like the wonderful talk that we went to, many of us just now, about the differences and how to attend differences in education. So going to conferences is one of the things that helps us to be a reflective teacher, but unfortunately, sometimes when we get home, we lose the adrenaline. We lose the joy that we have of communicating with people like us. For 3 days, it's a wonderful thing. And then we go back, and then we have to worry about the practicalities of our studies, our 3 jobs, our sons and daughters, our aging parents, our husbands, our wives, and we forget. So all I want to do, very simply, is to remind us about the importance of not losing this reflective habit that you've been using all through the week, okay? So the aims, if this works, very simply, this one, and this one. You can read, most of you. Can everyone read here? Or shall I read them aloud, in case somebody needs it? To discuss, define the meanings of reflective and reflective practice. To ask why, when, and how we can engage effectively, that's the big word, in an ongoing process of critical reflection on our work, on our students' individual needs and progress, and to consider how we as teachers can become models of critical reflection, not just for our students, but for everyone that we interact with. Okay? Are we okay as far as that? While I'm going along, here are some questions that I'd like us to consider to get quietly, individually, and I hope that by the end of the session, you'll be able to answer some of these questions for yourself. So why is it so important to see this process as part of our own independent, self-driven, continuous, ongoing professional development? What do we actually need? What skills and strategies do we need to become more systematically reflective about our work and about our lives. And how can we actually make this a professional activity for life? Now, as I said at the beginning, yes? Oh, okay. As I said at the beginning, this is not new. All of you who've studied recently a teacher training course have heard about reflective practice. So it's not the concepts that are new, but I'm hoping we're going to do a bit of sharing and telling each other about the experiences that we've had in order to support each other a little bit more in these processes. I'd like to use this little space that we have, actually, for you to take a moment to just turn to the person next to you and think about whether you think you have well-developed reflective skills. I am a reflective teacher, okay? Talk to the person who's sitting next to you about this phenomenon. I am a reflective teacher because. I am not a reflective teacher because. Do it now. Okay, I'm going to stop you there, and I'll be doing a lot of this stopping you, and I hope that you'll continue your conversations in the coffee breaks. Can I just see, can you put up your hand if you said, I am a reflective teacher because? Can I ask you to put up your hand and say, well, I'm not sure really if I'm a reflective teacher or not. I might be. And can I ask you to put up your hand if you said, no, I'm not really very reflective at all? Thank you for being honest. I love that. Thank you. What's your name? Okay, Jessica. Thank you very much indeed. So this is good for me. This is really good for me because it actually shows me that what I'm going to be saying is going to be relevant to some of you. What are they doing? Anyway, the next thing then is to actually think about this concept of reflect, to reflect. What does it mean to reflect? Might as well give up with that, I think. There are lots of definitions of reflection. First of all, if we think about mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Me! What am I holding in front of myself? A mirror, okay, a mirror. Okay, so one of the meanings of reflection is a mirror. When we reflect as people, we try to hold up a mirror to ourselves and think about what other people see. Now, as teachers, this is something really important because all the time, other people are subjected, are doomed, are punished by having to look at us the whole time. And it's not just look at us, it's aguantar nuestras manías, because we all have them, no? Nuestras obsesiones, o sea, como el maestro del grupo, we all have these things. And very often we're not even aware of them. So one aspect of reflecting is holding up the mirror to yourself, isn't it? Another aspect of reflecting obviously has to do with the thinking part. I'm hoping, thank you, that now I can show you my pictures. I was feeling very sad because I couldn't show you my pictures for the visual learners. Okay, so defining reflective, you can begin, obviously, with technical issues. And then the first meaning is this, which I've already demonstrated, probably better than by the picture. The first one is providing a reflection, as in reflective glass. The second, which some of us may not be so familiar with, is something which is produced by reflection. So when you take a photograph of the city at night, there's a sort of reflective glow of the lights. That's reflective as well. So that's interesting, isn't it? It's not just about reflecting back the image, it's about diffusing a glow, perhaps. And that glow might be a glow of inspiration, motivation. And thirdly is the one that people usually talk about, you know, when you're talking about critical thinking, reflective teacher, got to think a lot. And of course it's very important too. But for me, these are all very important aspects of being a reflective teacher. And I'll just illustrate them for you. This is the holding up a mirror, isn't it? Okay. This is what I hope is happening in your heads at the moment. I hope that some of the words I'm saying are producing a colourful, reflective glow. I hope you're not nodding off to sleep yet. And then the last one is related to thoughtful, to profound thought, and not just any old thought, but profound, reflective, discriminating, critical, analytical thought. And these things help me to understand what we mean by this kind of thinking. And I think the one by Stephen Hawking is the one that I need to remember, because I always talk too much, you know, and so I don't think my mind is very loud at all. I'm sure some of you have much louder minds than mine, because you spend more time thinking than talking. Even though talking is a very important part of finding out what you think. This is why in research we have techniques of verbal protocol and so on, because actually talking about what you think actually helps you to decide what you think. So talking's a good thing too, but before we talk, it's a good idea to have a bit of thought. Okay, so we might, Norton, for example, defines reflective thinking in that way. A disciplined inquiry into the motives, methods, materials, and consequences of educational practice. Motives, why? Methods, how? Materials, what? Consequences, what have we done? What have the consequences been? So if we develop reflective thinking in theory, it enables us to thoughtfully examine conditions and to thoughtfully examine attitudes, because attitudes are such an important part of learning as well. And think about anything which can impede or improve student achievement, okay? So I've done my homework. Now I want you to think about that for a minute, and with people around you, to negotiate a little definition of your own of reflective practice. Because if you thought about the word reflective, but what is reflective practice? Okay, you have about 10 seconds to do that now. Okay? And be ready to share. Okay, going to interrupt you now. Is there anybody who is ready to share their own definition of what reflective practice is? Yes? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, dear.
Thanks. Well, I think it is like a cycle. You do some activity, you do something in your classroom, and then you think about it, you evaluate many aspects of it, then you decide if you're going to change something for the better. Then when the time comes, you implement again, and then you reflect again, and it's like a cycle. It happens over and over again.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Somebody else? I saw some more hands up there. Gentlemen, yeah.
What we talked about is we were thinking about is at the end of the class, you think, how did it go? What happened? What did I do that went so well? Or, oh my God, what did I do that it went so bad? Am I going to do it again? Can I really say what I did right? What did I do wrong? Even though we can't really think much, but we have to say, all right, next time I have to do it differently.
Right, it's about change, isn't it? It's about change as a way of life. It's about educating yourself for life to think constructively every day. Okay, one more, and then we'll move on. One more? Okay. See, maestro.
We were talking about it, and then it's not only how we did things, but also how other people perceive what we have done. If we can somehow, because everything we do in the classroom impacts our students. So if the impact is positive, then we can say, okay, this activity was good. Okay, so it's both ways.
Okay, it's a two-way process.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. That connects in very much with what Edward was saying in his talk about encouraging our students to be reflective as well. And nowadays, we consider it so important to get feedback from our students on what works and what doesn't work. So ideally, every day, you would have a 5-minute session at the end of the lesson to get the students to help you to think about together what went well, what didn't go so well, what kind of things should be repeated, and what kind of things perhaps should not be repeated. Okay, I don't seem to be able to move on here, so I'm going to continue to think about this for a little moment, this aspect of getting the students to participate in the reflection. Even that doesn't have to be just a 5-minute thing every day. We can think about the possibility of asking our students to keep learning diaries. But we'll come back to that again in a minute. Let's think more now about actually doing reflective practice, reflecting what you do in the classroom, how and why you do it, how far it works and for whom. And one of the beautiful threads running through the tapestry of this conference has been inclusion. And in the wonderful presentation that we just saw, we saw how many of the strategies which the most reflective methodologies, if you like, include are very similar, because English as a foreign language has always respected the individual differences in language learners. However, I believe that we haven't respected enough those with the more pronounced different abilities. And this is something I think is becoming more and more important as government policies for inclusion are being implemented all the way around the world. So it's all about self-observation and self-evaluation. And for obvious reasons, I'm going to go a little more quickly for a minute or two. Okay. It's about collecting information, but it's not just about collecting information. This word systematically, not just sometimes, but making it a habit. It's about analyzing and evaluating the information to explore your practices, to explore what you believe, even if sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable. It means trying out alternative approaches and activities to make positive changes and improvements in our teaching for better learning experiences. It means intellectual analysis about reasons, reflection on responses, emotions, exploration of experiences through descriptions, enriching our understanding through awareness. I think the microphone's a bit better now. And it's about responsibility. It's not about having someone tell you what to do. It's about taking the responsibility to do it yourself. Here's another activity for you. Share an example of one occasion, or more if you have time, I don't think I'll give you time, when you seriously engaged in reflective practice yourself, and be ready to share and explain your experience. You have 5 seconds for that. I'll give you a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I'll enjoy the armchair. Okay, I'm going to interrupt you there. And maybe not everybody had a time to share, but again, you'll have your coffee break soon, and you can continue the conversation. Would anybody like to share with the whole group? Yes, thank you. Could you say your name for us when you... Yeah.
My name is Adriana, and the time that I reflected the most was at a time when I took the ISOLT at UJET, precisely, and one of the assignments or the tasks that we had to do was reflect on the class that we had taught. And it was part of an exercise to complete a lesson plan. It's like it didn't finish when we finished the lesson, whether it went well or wrong. It finished when we reflected, and there were a series of questions that we had to answer in order to complete the task until, to the end. And it was a very interesting exercise because you really had to think what exactly had gone right, if it had, and if you could use it again, and what went wrong, and if it went wrong, what you were going to do to improve it. And I believe that if we always took that time to reflect, we would be very much better teachers than we are.
Thank you very much, Adriana. No, don't. I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
During that course, you developed your reflective skills. Now, here's
Yes.
a difficult question, but we're being sincere now. How often do you do that thing? Do you sit down and think about your lesson and make notes now that you're not a student?
Not very often.
Ah.
But I do understand the importance, and coming to the Congress before this talk, we had another one, and I recalled that how important it was, and I would like to go back and do that again.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Thank you for being honest, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? I mean, we know, we have to understand the theory, we have to understand what we're doing, But in reality, we have to be honest about our strengths, our weaknesses, what our students need, and what we need. So this whole message, the whole message underlying this little tiny intervention is to remember and to become more systematic about your own process, okay? Thank you very much, and especially to Adriana. Give her a round of applause, because she was so honest. Thank you. And guess what? I have to remind myself too. So have we done that? Yeah, done that. Let's move on then and think about different levels of reflection. We've thought about different qualities of reflection, like the mirror, like the glow in our brains, and like the thoughtful person, no? Now let's think about these different levels of reflection. According to the current British Council Teaching for Success brochure, they say that we can engage in different levels of reflection. Don't believe this. I mean, don't believe anything you ever read, because remember that research is in progress. So even when people are reporting on their research, somebody else is doing some research which will help us to improve it, okay? So this is just one interpretation, but I do find it quite helpful, because I think it does reflect, actually, the levels of reflection, valga la repetición. So let's think about what the difference is between these different levels of reflection. According to these definitions, then awareness is like, I've heard of it. So, you know, I've heard of cosmic radiation. Okay. I've heard of intergalactic connecting black holes. I've heard of geometry, but I can't do it. You know, I don't know anything about it at all. I'm a failed mathematics person. Mathematical dyslexia. Understanding is you actually know what it means. And you know why it's important. So understanding is about the theory. And my problem with many courses is that they stop there. They give you the theory, they help you to understand, but they don't go beyond that. My apologies for the microphone. I'm not very good with a microphone. Engagement is when you can do it. Remember that competence, there's been so much written, so much blah, blah, blah about competences. All competence is something you can do, okay? So if you can do it, you're competent, okay? I've just dismissed, you know, millions of books out there, but anyway. If you're competent, you can do it, and you're at the level of a range of engagement. So you've heard the term, you understand the term, and you can actually do it in your classroom. And then integration is sort of being more than competent, because at the same time, this concept or this practice se difunde en todo lo que hacen en el salón. Está ahí todo el tiempo. Es como una sabiduría más arraigado, ¿no? So if you actually reach the level of integration of practices into your teaching, then you're becoming what I would call a senior teacher, an advanced teacher, a more competent teacher. Okay? So let's just see if you've understood these terms. Here's another thing for you to do with your buddy. Okay? Look at these three terms along the top: inclusion, learner empowerment, learner agency, and decide whether you believe you're at the level of awareness, understanding, engagement, or integration. Okay? 10 seconds? All right, 30 seconds. Okay. Give you a couple of minutes. And I'm not going to ask you to expose yourselves on this one, okay? This is private between you and your mate. Okay. May I interrupt you again? Okay, there's never enough time to talk. You put two teachers together and we can talk till next Friday. Okay, but I do believe, as I've been going to the talks and the presentations at this event, that I have seen people suddenly, from their faces, I've seen them becoming aware, of something. I've seen other people saying, oh, yes, 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 I understand that, yes, read about that, yes. And then you see other people engaging and actually sharing some of their experience. And then you see other people who are actually demonstrating some of the beliefs that they've reflected on, some of their philosophy, some of the theory that they've reflected on, and you could say that they're trying to integrate that into their participation, whether they're giving a session or whether you're attending a session. Because a session like this, it's not just about the presenter, is it? I can't do this if you're not there. And it's exactly the same with the teachers and our learners. Okay? So are those concepts, those levels of reflection quite clear for you? Thank you. Okay. Does it help you to understand why this reflective process should go on for life? Does it? Because the thing is, that little comment I just made about research is so true. As soon as one piece of research is published, another piece of research is published to enrich it, not necessarily to contradict it. I'm so old that when I started teaching, it was all listen and repeat. Behaviorism. The cat is on the mat. Bing. Dog. The dog is on the mat. Oh, it wasn't like that in my classrooms because I was always a bit of a rebel. But we won't talk about that at the moment. Okay, so why engage in reflective practice? I think this is all pretty obvious, really. And the last thing is the most important, because if we can be the best we can be as teachers, then we'll be helping our learners to be the best they can be. And if we really believe in all of this, we'll be projecting this in every class. So when should we reflect on our practice then? Moving on to the next point, jumping forward in the interest of time, when do you think it's most important to reflect on practice? I'm not going to do this activity because we lost a little bit of time at the beginning with the technical issues. So I'm just going to put up some ideas of when other people that I've talked to, when the books consider that we should reflect on our practice, okay? Can you manage for a minute without doing anything? Yeah? Yeah, you're okay? Okay. Some of the examples then. We should definitely reflect if you can see that your students have been losing motivation in your lessons. I think that's the red light, isn't it? That's a red light. Also, when we do our beautiful lesson plan, and we state our goals, and we say, by the end of the lesson, our students will be able to A, B, C, and they can't. That's a very, very important time to reflect. After marking their work, and I'd love to give you another whole session on different ways of responding to people's work to motivate them, but not today. That's a very, very important time to reflect, isn't it? Because we have to think about what aspects we need to give feedback on to the whole group, to individuals, how to do it. And then again, when we hear people saying good things about our colleagues' classes, it's a good time to enter into discussion, to discuss, to find out what are they doing that maybe I could share, and what could I share to them. I'm sure you would have come up with lots of other ideas, but that's just a few ideas of how you might engage. Okay? So that was the first aim, meanings of reflective and reflective practice. Then the second aim was to ask why, when, and how. Okay, so we haven't done that yet, but we've done the other bit, haven't we? So we've asked why, we've asked when, and now we're going to start thinking about how. Because again, so often in these conferences and so on, we tell people what they should do, but we don't tell them how to do it. And we send you off into the wild jungle of the classroom to find out how to do it on your own. Okay, and that's not really fair, is it? Okay, so done that. How can I begin to reflect on my teaching? Here are 2 simple questions. I've got a folder that I use to prepare this talk, and I could have put up 25 questions easily. But I decided that these 2 questions are actually the essence of it all. Did my teaching make a difference to someone today? Did they learn something today? And how do I know? How did I notice? There you go. Your turn again. Tell someone beside you about a day, about a specific experience in your teaching at any time when you knew that your teaching had made a difference. Tell your compañero or compañeros what you did, how you knew your teaching had made a difference. How did the students show you that you'd done something that was really good for them? Okay? 35 seconds, I think will be enough. Okay, I've been reflecting on how wonderful it is to have a sofa for the plenary speaker. But anyway, sorry. In those few minutes, did you actually learn something from each other? Did you get an idea from each other? Would you agree then that actually reflecting doesn't have to be a lonely experience? When you share experiences with each other, you're reflecting on your teaching, you're collaborating, and you're supporting each other. And I have found as a trainer, and I have to say, that I've been in training since 1983, since before some of you were born, maybe, and that I'm an examiner, a moderator, a tutor, all of those things for different international organizations. But one of the problems that I've always found is that people often don't find almas gemelas. I think it's really important at work to find, even it isn't an alma gemela, maybe an alma semi-gemela, ¿no? Un poquito gemela. O sea, pues un chispito gemela, pero somebody that you can talk to about your experiences, somebody that you can share your experiences to, and share this responsibility for improving yourselves and each other. Again, I'm going to move on and give you 1 or 2 very concrete ideas about how you can actually begin to reflect on your own teaching. Obviously, as Adriana said, this is the easy one, this is the typical one, where you actually look at the lesson plan that you just gave and you make recordings to observe yourself. You make notes on the video about how you used your resources and materials, and then comments on the strengths of your teaching. And the most important bit, of course, is the plan to improve. Because if you do all of that and then just let it go and forget about it, well then of course nothing's going to happen. The most important thing is the action plan, and it is something that we do in courses. And again, I don't want to be unrealistic. You maybe won't be able to do it every day, maybe not even every week. But I do think that it's a really enlightening experience to watch yourself on video. The first time I watched myself giving a class on video, some of my friends know this, I found that I had this awful, repetitive tic. I found it so irritating. I thought, gosh, I wonder how many years I've been irritating my students and my victims at conferences and so on. So even at that level, watching yourself on video can be very, very enlightening. So you might even, the first time you do it, you might just look for that body language and physical things that you do, which might not be very nice for your learners. And then you can look at another aspect, and another aspect, and another aspect, and develop your self-critical skills. We mentioned right at the beginning the fact that it was, Maestro, you mentioned that it's a two-way process, didn't you? This recording learners' reactions and including a short reflection at the end of some classes, not every class, because otherwise it would be, ay, tenemos que reflexionar otra vez porque la Miss quiere. But I think it should be a short and honest reflection. What did we do today? What did you like? What did you dislike? Are there any suggestions you'd like to make? Getting the students to participate in the reflections and to enjoy it with you as a constructive process. In the same way, you might have a focus group with small groups of your students. Get them together once a month in small groups and give them very focused questions and say, over this month, what have been the activities that you've enjoyed most? Where do you think you have learned most? What could I do better as your teacher? Any feedback that you can think of from learners. You can use email. Send me an email. You can have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group to talk about things. Here I'm thinking more about perhaps older learners, university learners and so on, because here we have teachers of students of all age groups, don't we? Peer observation is something which has been talked about so much and is done so little. Why is that? Is it fear? Is it timetabling? Is it, I have 3 jobs, I simply don't have time? Is it some and some and some? How many people in this room have engaged in peer observation as part of a course like the ICELT or the licenciatura or whatever? Okay. How many of you have engaged in peer observation at work as a colleague? Good. So some of you really have done it. Those of you who have done peer observation at work, Melissa, can I ask you to get ready? Could somebody tell us what they learned from doing peer observation at work, not part of a course, at work? Yes, thank you, Maestra.
Well, I think you definitely get some very good ideas for teaching methods or activities that you would have never thought of yourself. That's something I've found.
Could you repeat that, please? Because I was having my photograph taken
Yes.
in a most professional way.
All right. Yeah, I mean, just activities or methods that I wouldn't have thought of myself. That's something I've seen in observations that I've done. I always take away some very good ideas for myself.
Your name?
Francisco.
Francisco, one of my favorite men's names. I love Francisco, Saint Francisco, all of that. Francisco, thank you. When you go in to visit somebody, how do you feel when you go in?
Well, it's a little self-conscious because, I mean, I have observed and I have been observed. And I know that when you have an observer in your class, the class is not natural, right? You kind of want to seem more professional because you are being observed. So when you are the observer, you are aware of this.
So it's more like a performance now. So when you go in to observe, there's this sort of double thinking going on, isn't there? Because you know that because you're there, the teacher that you're visiting is going to be different from every day. Is that always a bad thing?
I don't really know. I mean, I have been observed, and when I have been observed, I try to look more professional, and but it's not really that different from the normal class.
That's the thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, It's like when you stand up here, a lot of people suddenly become a different person, when you stand up in front of. And I would definitely say that when I was a lot younger and I started to present, I did sort of become this sort of super professional, sort of super ideal, something that actually I'm not, because I have as many errors, mistakes, forgetful moments as everybody else in this room, It's just that I love communicating with teachers. And so I guess there's an element of egoism in doing what I do. It's the communication thing. It's great. But I don't think it's a bad thing that you know that the person, the victim, is going to do something special, because it's actually nice for people's self-esteem when you finish visiting your friend to say, gosh, that was really fantastic. You're a really good teacher. Somebody who has received a visitor, thank you very much indeed, Francisco. Somebody who has received a visitor, not an examiner, a colleague, okay. Melissa, David would like to share an experience of when he received a colleague.
Actually, could I just back up 1 second? I just wanted to make a really quick comment. I heard a report on the BBC that when doctors are observed, those are the times when more patients survive in the hospitals than ever before.
Well, that's fascinating. So when we're observed, more of our students survive than ever before. Thank you, David. So could I just repeat the other question? Somebody who has received a colleague and has agreed to be observed, how does that feel? How does it feel? Not Francisco, he's done it. Okay, yes, somebody else. Yeah. Thanks for that, David. That's very interesting.
When I've received colleagues, I tend to act as naturally as I can. I don't act naturally when I'm a teacher. Yeah, but the thing is that I try to collaborate with them. I try to show them the things in my magic box that work.
That's lovely.
That could work for them, because it's usually younger teachers, sometimes aspiring teachers, and I would like them to see that this is career path that can be very rewarding, and that if it doesn't matter if you have been teaching for 10 years, 20 years, there's always something new that you can learn.
Absolutely. And do you sometimes discuss afterwards with them?
Yeah, most of the time. The thing is that they usually come with this question. They usually say, I don't know if my students are learning. And I told them, come see my class and tell me if you think they're learning.
Yes. Yes.
And then I go to your class and see if yours are learning. So I kind of engage them into reflecting on their own practice.
Thank you very much indeed. Fantastic. There's a fantastic model there. One more. Over here, Melissa, or somebody. Okay, this one. Yes,
I'm
please.
sorry, I already have the mic over here.
Yeah.
What you asked about
Sorry,
when
I can't see you behind the
I'm
camera. Hold on.
you asked about over here.
Now I've moved. Okay. Okay,
right,
sorry.
all right.
Your name again?
Javier.
Javier. Yeah.
Yes. You asked about if I had a colleague coming to my class and how it made me feel. Well, the thing that I've always done is I've asked that colleague to make sure that he comes in before all my students to get to the class. Because if once that person comes in late, it's going to make all my students feel awkward. So they're going to say, "Oh, what do we do now? Can we be the same?" But at the same time, when they're there, they're not. I actually remind my colleagues, please do not interrupt the class. Don't help the students. Don't do anything that's going to make you obvious.
Okay.
Just come and if you come to observe the class, observe the class.
Okay.
But I've had some times when my colleagues would actually correct my students, help them with the English word, help them with the Spanish words, which is actually. If you go to visit someone, you really just go observe them.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. There has to be a protocol. I agree with what you're saying, but I also agree that if you participate, si participan a los alumnos y dicen, "Oye, fíjense que," I mean, in English, of course. One of our teachers wants to come in, wants to see how you're doing because you're all doing so well. You can make it an event to actually show the students or make the students feel that the person's coming because they're so good and they're doing such good things. And you remember that people respond in the way that we treat them. So if you tell somebody, you're a very slow reader, you're in group 10, you're a fantastic reader, you're in group 1, people believe it. No. And they begin to act in that way. So you can use these peer observations to actually help the self-esteem of your students, to help the motivation. Wow, this other teacher's coming because we're so good. No, it doesn't matter how you manage it. Javier's protocol is fine, but it needs to be an agreed protocol. It isn't just de repente alguien cae del cielo, ¿no? El paracaidista y ahí está como el elefante en el salón. O sea, y nadie dice nada. When I go as an examiner, I always ask my victims, my trainees, to introduce me to the students, and I always say, I've come to work with your teacher. So please don't be afraid, I'm not testing you, I'm working with your teacher. No. So these courtesies and protocolos are very, very important. And now, thank you, Javier, we'll go to the gentleman over here. Your name is?
Hey, thank you. My name is Carlos.
Carlos, okay.
And I think that peer observation, it doesn't even matter who is going to observe you. If you know them from before, you're always going to be like anxious. You're going to be nervous about the developing of your class.
Yes.
About your students, like if they want to play with you, you know you're going to be in trouble. But I think one of the most important things is to be calm.
That's a very wise thing to say, isn't it? Stay calm and don't engage in these activities with people who are going to come just to say you did this well, you did this bad. That's not what it's about. So again, talking to your compañero, understanding why you're doing this. It's not tell me what I'm doing wrong. It's about let's walk along this road together, because it's a hard road. It's a difficult road, no? But it's a fantastic road. There's a lady over there who would like to say something, and that will be the last one, I think, for this point. I'm keeping my eye on the time. We started a little late, so I'll finish a little late. Is that okay with the technical problems and things? Yeah. Madame.
Thank you. Hello. I would like to point out that it is inevitable to feel judged.
Yes.
It is inevitable. I mean, we can take it as positive and with all the protocol and everything, but we are going to feel judged as well as the learners.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is the most delicate thing, either when we visit or when we are visited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's related to insecurity, it's related to fear, it's related to confidence. And believe me, all of us share these fears. Renata, me consta, just before this talk, I said to Renata, I didn't do mi última revisión de la plática porque quise ir a la plática de las maestras de la embajada y me siento súper nerviosa. I mean, everybody shares these feelings. It's all about sincerity, honesty, and a genuine and sincere wish to collaborate, I think. And you have to find people who feel that way, because you're not going to do this with somebody that you know is going to go back to the teacher's room and say, fíjate, ¿qué crees que hizo fulano de tal? En su clase. You know who those people are. You know who they are. And you're not going to engage with them. You're going to find your alma gemela, or media gemela, or chispita de gemela, as we said. Okay. All right, enough. Thank you. Okay, let me go back. Another one is keeping a journal. The bottom line of this is actually just making notes in your book. Some of us are so busy that we don't have time to keep a formal teaching journal. These are very idealistic ideas that come from back in the 80s, 90s, when teachers, full-time teachers, taught about 5 hours a day and had, 3 days to prepare classes, horas de cubículo and all of that. Doesn't happen anymore. Okay. So the minimum that you should be doing is making notes in your books and about things that are going well, things that are not going well, to help your memory. If you can write a diary, a daily bitácora of what you're doing, that's a great thing to do. And again, sharing with another colleague. Forming a reflective inquiry group, that's another interesting thing. Just a little anecdote here. I think I've got time. I was once in Cambridge with a group of teachers who were all involved in teaching associations. I was involved very much in Mextesol in the 80s. Me tocó el Congreso del Temblor del 85. You may not be surprised, I think, that I decided I didn't want to be on the committee after that. Anyway, I was in Cambridge with this group of teachers from all over the world, and a wonderful lady from India said that she really wanted to have a group of almas gemelas. So one Saturday, she just invited 2 or 3 people to have a cup of tea, India, a cup of chai, at her home, and they just chatted about work and gossiped about work. And at the end, the 5 or 6 people who were there said, hey, this was really cool. Can we do this again? It's so nice to just talk about what we do. And so she said, okay, let's do it once a month. And they agreed that the first Saturday of every month, sin obligación, but if they could, they'd get together in her house and talk. But the next time, she brought a little article from Tessol Journal. And after they chatted for a bit, she said, oh, by the way, I read this really interesting article last week, but you won't be interested. Yeah. What's it about? Okay. And so she didn't make them read the article. She just told them what it was about. inevitably somebody said, "Can I have a copy?" So what's happening here? That was the beginning of Indian TESOL group. That's how it began. There are now thousands of members. But it began with this little group. In the same way that Recale, the national group of researchers in Mexico, began as a tiny, tiny group. No? But it's been growing and growing and growing and publishing, and another book is going to come out very soon from Recale. Little things grow into big things. And all of these little things involve being a reflective teacher, reflecting on what you do, but not just in the privacy of your boudoir, but with your colleagues, with your friends, with other people. And from little tiny things, you can actually change attitudes. You can change so many things. I went backwards, okay, we're fine. Okay. So it's this, I think here, this needs to be, somebody said, there was a gentleman over there who talked about, right at the beginning of the talk, this reflective process being a cycle, okay? And I'm just going to say a little bit about that. This is a highly complex model. What? So what? Now what? Do you get the message? So, what happened in my class? Or what happened in that meeting? So what? What shall I do about it? Now what? How can I continue to develop it? So that's a very, very simple cyclical model, which for some of our more advanced teachers will not be very satisfying. So I've got something a little more scientific for you. But I like that. What? So what? Now what? Here you go. Here's a more grown-up version. Okay. So you describe something that happened. You register feelings. You evaluate. So describing is more objective. Then you register feelings, responses, evaluate, analysis, conclusions, and convert that into an action plan. Okay? So this is Gibbs' reflective model. And there's a link there. And I forgot to say at the beginning, because I was a little bit fazed by all of the things that were happening. But I forget to say that anybody can have a copy of this. If you write to my email, I'll put my email up at the end. And this talk belongs to you if you want it. I don't want that. Okay. Other ways of developing yourself all involve critical reflection. They all involve thinking about yourself, thinking about what you can do, thinking about your own strengths and weaknesses, how you can help your organization as well as your students. Because sometimes we are a bit like that, aren't they? It's like, my students in my classroom, and we do this, you know. And we don't look outside and think about how we can actually support the department, the university, the state, las maestras de la secretaría, etc., etc., etc. Okay? All of these things will help you to develop professionally, and they include critical reflection. Here are more. There's a link there which I'm not going to open now because of time. Joining teachers' organizations, for example, becoming a leader yourself, following leadership programs, which there are becas for this kind of thing, there are scholarships, so it's not, oh no, I can't afford it. Mind you, we may prefer to go to a different country, I don't know. Online courses, workshops, webinars, looking for scholarships. There are so many conferences around the world which will offer to help you with your transport, with your registration, if you look for them, but you have to get out there onto the internet and look for them. More advanced teachers, and all of these are part of being a reflective teacher along the course of your life. And indeed, this educating for life, this becoming a lifelong learner, if I can project that message to you, how satisfying it is. So many people feel, okay, voy a hacer la maestría y ya, hasta allí. Si yo hubiera dicho eso, yo hubiera dejado de estudiar en 1981. Imagine, I can't imagine life without studying. I can't imagine life without having MA students, PhD students, learning with them as they become experts in their area. How boring my life would be if I were not learning all the time. Does anybody really want to stop studying? There you go, doing that. So it's all about moving out of your comfort zone, isn't it? It's moving out of your comfort zone to where the magic happens. And as C.S. Lewis said, and as I totally believe, you are never too old for anything. You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. And I'm going to share with you today that I'm dreaming a new dream at this very moment. Many of us never have the opportunity to build our own house. Por cosas de la vida, I'm going to be building my new house. That's my next project, along with everything else. It's never too old to have another dream. So before we finish, thank you, I want you to think individually about this. Because we're running late, I would love to have done a whole activity with feedback. But promise me, and in a minute you're going to put your hand on your heart and you're going to shout out, I promise, Pat. And if you break your promise, I will come to you in your dreams and I will haunt you. And I will say, you broke your promise. Okay. So think individually. In 1 year's time, I will have built a house. Not personally, every ladrillo, but In 5 years' time, I will have got 3 more people through their PhD. And I hope about 50 more people, at least, through their MA. In 10 years' time, I will have retired and I'll finally be publishing my poetry and selling my pictures. Perhaps. But you know what? I doubt if I'll ever be able to give up teaching. I've tried and I haven't been able to. So please will you now promise me that you're going to do this exercise and you're going to think about how you're going to reflect and develop as a teacher. And do you promise? I can't hear anything. I promise, Pat. Again. Thank you. And I promise to go on helping people as long as I can and as long as they keep calling me. And thank you all very, very much indeed. Did you get some ideas? Do you think about how you can make it part of your life? That's the theory, don't worry. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Bless you.